I just saw a story about, well, we were talking about the cats and dogs being eaten in Ohio, but I just saw a story just today about how the street gangs in Chicago are now going to war with the Venezuelan gangs that the U.S. is importing. So we've got this big gang war going on, and we've got the gangbangers in Chicago becoming Trump voters.
The Financial Survival Network. Now more than ever. The Financial Survival Network.
Welcome. You are listening to and watching Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz, your host. John Rubino is with us after a long hiatus. John, what are they eating here in Springfield, Ohio? Are they eating the cats? Are they eating the dogs? Or is this all just a figment of our collective imagination here?
Yeah, you got to wonder what they're doing to Ohio, what the problem is, because I grew up in Ohio, actually. I was not too far from East Palestine, where that train blew up, and Springfield is not that far away either. And now we've got, yeah, they're eating the cats and dogs in Ohio. Um, I have no idea about the veracity of a lot of this stuff, but it's hilarious. You got to admit it's just damn funny, to have this stuff going on right now because it's creating a lot of very cool memes and videos and things out there.
I'm
So it's
sorry,
inspiration for a lot of people. But I know, I know. And oh, by the way, Carrie, congratulations on being out of YouTube jail. I'm looking forward to being seen on this show by the audience you should have had all along, which is 10 times what YouTube let you have there for a while. So,
I mean,
good news.
I had two, like Martin Armstrong, 130,000 views, which I had in the past before I wound up in YouTube in the digital re-education what do you call that? The digital re-education camps and gulags. I was in the gulag. I wasn't in the camp. And Andy Schechtman, he did about 40,000 or so. So we're free at
Nice. Well,
last.
see, that's the viewership you should have had all along. So it's nice to see you get it back, and
Hey,
be grateful that it was just digital gulag because they've got all this internment camps out there, and I think that people on our side of the political spectrum are probably destined for those camps before all is said and done. So
yeah, I'll tell you, like countries have been exporting their undesirables to this country since Georgia and the Carolinas. Remember, they were penal colonies and servants, indentured servitude, which was specifically uh, done away with in the Constitution. But in latter times in the 70s, Cuba did the Mariel boat lift where they emptied their mental hospitals and their prisons and said, hey, the streets are paved with gold in America. Go there and make your fortune. And South Florida has never been the same. Now, I'm not putting down the Cuban community. Uh, Honestly, they make more than Native Americans, and it's vibrant. But the jails in South Florida were never the same. The law enforcement, the lawlessness that occurred as a result of that boat lift, and Venezuela and Colombia and all the countries of South America. I guess we should be glad that El Salvador built their supermax prison. Otherwise, they would have shipped them all off here as well, right?
yeah, okay. Open borders can have only two points, only two reasons for existing. One is to flood a country with new voters who are going to vote for the people who let them in order to give one political party a big advantage over the other. And that's obvious, and I think that's indisputable. And the other is to destabilize a society and set the stage for martial law. And that's a little more arguable, but I think that's completely possible too, that's one of the reasons that we have open borders now. And both of them are very bad. And both of them are leading to just crazy stuff happening. Two things. I just saw a story about, well, we were talking about the cats and dogs being eaten in Ohio, but I just saw a story just today about how the street gangs in Chicago are now going to war with the Venezuelan gangs that the U.S. is importing. So we've got this big gang war going on, and we've got the gangbangers in Chicago becoming Trump voters because they know who to blame for the extra competition that they're seeing. And so this is going to be, I mean, this isn't going to end anytime soon because nothing's going to happen to send those Venezuelans back, at least for the next 6 or so months, probably. And that means you're literally going to have gang wars there between existing gangs and new gangs coming in and trying to take over. So yeah, it's just a shocking thing that we did because none of it is actually good for the U.S. It helps one political party, or it helps the aristocracy when they want to declare martial law. But it doesn't help the country as a whole in any way, shape, or form, And I think there will be political consequences for this, but I'm not sure they're going to be sufficient to offset the harm that
Well,
is being caused by open borders. And just look at where we're going to be 5 or 10 years from now. Look at Europe. I think Europe might be gone. Europe is beyond redemption right now because the demographics have moved so dramatically against native-born Europeans that culture is on the way out. And so hopefully, because there's nothing we can do to help, but hopefully that is an object lesson for us. And maybe we'll learn that lesson before it's too late. But man, it
can
looks
only
like
pray.
the guys in charge don't really want to learn that lesson at all.
Hey, and well, we don't want to get too political here, but I think this is the defining, now that the statistics have come out, that we imported deliberately over 13,000 murderers and 15,000 sex offenders, and God knows what else, 600,000 criminals. And what's the purpose for allowing them into this country other than to raise mayhem and to break down the societal order that's Cloward Piven on steroids using the penal system? And the only way that you can combat it is through some type of martial law, or just saying, hey, they're illegal aliens. You don't get any constitutional protections. You're out of here. And then you just put them on a ship and you send them back to Venezuela, to Honduras, to all these countries, to Haiti, wherever they come from, and say, they're your problem, have at it. But there's millions of them that have come in over the border, and, we do want the hardworking ones. They do play a vital role, but look, like I laughingly say, Biden's 3 major accomplishments in his term, John, is number 1, he ended a useless war in Afghanistan, brought our troops home in a week, right? He ended the labor shortage that we were having after COVID, right? And we talked about this before. He rescued the hotel industry, especially in New York and Chicago and LA, right?
Yeah, he did do all of those things. You are absolutely right.
Those are his accomplishments.
Okay, leading from here to World War III, speaking of Biden's accomplishments.
Yeah, well,
we are seriously drifting into a shooting war with nuclear powers. And we got a dementia patient as president. The vice president is running a political campaign where, which might be better than having, I don't know. I don't want to get too political, but I'm, as a father of 2 sons, I'm terrified of us going to war with nuclear powers. And it really does feel like we're doing that. So yeah, it's there's stuff we can laugh about, and then there's other stuff that is in no way funny. There's nothing funny about nuclear Armageddon, and we're probably as close to that as we have been since you and I have been alive, Carrie. The 60s and 70s were pretty contentious globally, but I think this is worse. And so if we get through the next 6 months, I think we'll have a little bit of breathing room and maybe see some, clear ground to do some work on. But boy, the next 6 months are going to be scary times.
You know, all of these neocons grew up in the 60s and they listened to Randy Newman. If you remember him, he had a
Yeah.
song, They All Hate Us Anyhow, so let's drop the big one now. And they didn't realize that that was satire. They thought that should be government policy.
Well, was that song in Doctor Strangelove? Because if it was,
I don't
I
think
think that
so.
movie. Okay, I think that movie was a template for these guys too, because the um, the aristocracy had bunkers right at the end. Dr. Strangelove is telling the generals and everybody that they've set up a bunch of bunkers and now we have to repopulate the earth. So we've brought in a lot of healthy young women to help you repopulate the earth. And the
Yeah.
generals are like, yeah, all right. When you put it that way. And I really do think that the billionaires of the world and the other parts of the aristocracy have their bunkers. They literally think they can survive a nuclear war, and so they just basically don't care what happens to the peasants,
Yeah.
and so they're not putting a stop to this.
Here's verse one. No one likes us. I don't know why. We may not be perfect, but heaven knows we try. And all around the world, even our old friends put us down. Let's drop the big one and see what happens. This is what we're going through
Yeah,
here. These
we
people are
are very
insane.
close to something like that. Yeah. We're trying to destroy civilization via open borders, and we're coming at it from another direction, trying to destroy civilization via a, potentially existential war. Yeah, and there's nothing we can do about it because we don't even know who's in charge. Ah, what a world.
Well, according to a certain element of this group, we're all a bunch of useless eaters. The world is overpopulated by about 90%. So they're doing the Earth a favor by reducing the population, right? Isn't that what it's about?
Well,
Well, hey, if we don't have World War III, think of how much your gold and silver are now going to be worth.
see, that's the trade-off. Okay, I don't want to say that's the most frustrating thing about this, but it is making it hard for me to enjoy watching my big old stack of gold and silver go up in value. Having lots of free capital to play with is a good thing until the bomb hits your town, and you're vaporized. So if they would just let me stop worrying about it, I would really enjoy the whole gold and silver action lately.
Yeah, well, it's a little tough when you're dealing with existential threats, but I do believe we're going to somehow avoid this. But I do wonder who's watching the store because it's nobody we elected who, in theory, is supposed to do this stuff is paying any attention to it. So, uh, well, it's all the deep state, I guess, that's
Well,
running things.
it's the Joint Chiefs of Staff, it's the heads of the State Department, it's the CEOs of the defense and pharmaceutical companies, and it's a handful of other people that are
Bill
just very
Gates.
rich and very powerful. Yeah, Bill Gates is weighing in on this, and George Soros. Did you see what they did with George Soros just lately? His son.
Yeah.
They expedited the purchase by
Uh-huh.
the Soros companies of 200 more, was it radio or TV
Yeah,
stations?
conservative radio stations are buying out the chain. They'll throw off everybody. But, the thing is that talk radio, it still has a following, but it's been in a steady death spiral since Rush Limbaugh died. And demographically, it's just like the younger generations don't have any patience for talk radio.
No, no. Still, though, those are media outlets that are going to
Yes.
have a very different message um, put into them by somebody from another country with $1 billion to play with and whose attitude is that open borders are a good thing. So,
Yeah.
it's not good. But
Oh,
you're right. Talk radio is losing ground to podcasts. So as long as you've got YouTube, which is, iffy on a lot of things, and Rumble and Spotify, you can still hear most of the good voices out there.
yeah.
But
Yeah. And
the next thing is just to come after them, and they're trying that hard
oh,
with arresting the guy from what was the name of that place?
which one?
The free speech Oh, I'll think of it in a minute. And
Oh,
then
yeah, yeah.
you know what I mean, in Europe, in France, they
Right.
arrested him.
Yes, that
And
was a telegram. Telegram.
Telegram, yeah,
Yes.
Telegram. And
Yeah, we
then
should
they
speak about that. And they let him go subsequently, but
he had to submit to some things. Now
yeah,
he's now providing information about his people to the governments. Uh,
yeah. This is alarming because a lot of people use Telegram. I don't personally use it. There's only so many platforms you can use, and then your head starts spinning. I kind of got into TikTok a little bit, and but TikTok is for people with no more than a 45-second attention span, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's in no way private.
No,
So you're just
no,
you're
it's
just
Chinese.
funneling information to the Chinese government instead of the US government. So, there are very few free speech platforms and very few private platforms out there, and they're shrinking by the day. But that there's still hope because a lot of people are
Mhm.
watching this and they're coming to the correct conclusion that free
Yeah.
speech is the only thing that stands between us and them. And them, they
Mhm.
who want to take over the world and run it as a dictatorship shouldn't be in charge. So I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see. It's
I yeah, I see it, what you're talking about. Not, this is not an ad for Trump. You know, you and I both know he's not the answer. He's never really ever squarely addressed the deficit or a lot of other problems that we have in the country. Obviously, he's hell bent on addressing the military industrial complex now, though, and the deep state. And, if I were them, I'd be a little bit concerned, wouldn't you?
yeah. If Trump came in and he wanted revenge and
Hmm.
he went for it, that would be bad for the country in the long run because it would set a precedent that that's what incoming administrations do. They take out their competition, but sure would be hilarious to watch. It would be just the most entertaining thing in the world to see like Nancy Pelosi being perp walked in handcuffs for insider trading or Hillary. Oh my God,
Yeah. Hey,
so
march
to
them
see
all off to Gitmo
march
and
them off. Yeah. I
because
mean, again, I'm not saying it would be a good thing, but it
no,
would be hilarious. So
and
some bad things are hilarious.
it's not a
This would be
good
one of them.
thing, and it's not necessarily an undeserved punishment for them because what they've done, the way they've come after him, is just you know, it's
Yeah.
shocking.
Well, yeah, I mean,
It's
really
never been done.
obvious. I mean, they weaponized the Justice Department
Yeah.
and they've got the FBI, actively covering up investigations
Uh-huh.
into things relating to Trump and you got the Justice Department um, expediting every kind of indictment that you can think of. So, it's obvious that's what's happening. And I do not want Trump to emulate that kind of behavior if he
No.
gets elected. Maybe
But
just like 1 week of perp walking these
yeah,
guys,
they
go
they
go get
deserve it.
Chuck Schumer and
But they
put
deserve
him
it.
in a orange prison jumpsuit and put him on, okay.
Hey, would
Uh,
they hesitate to do it to him, John?
oh, of course not. Of course not. But again, see, we want to go back to being a country that has some respect for the rule
Of
of law.
laws.
And the only way you can do that is to not use the government as a political weapon against your enemies. You have to make everything about the law and not about your personal preferences or your desire for revenge. And so, hopefully Trump takes that route and his own success is his revenge.
Well, that's
Uh,
what he
but
says, but I don't
but
believe him.
well, I mean, it's understandable if he feels differently. If he wants to send the Justice Department after some of these guys for the real crimes that they've committed, I get it. I don't know where that leads. I don't know if it leads to a place that we'll be happy to be in the future.
And it's like the average person will not be able to differentiate him doing it as opposed to what Biden did to him. They won't.
Yeah, it'll
They'll
just be what
believe,
you do. when you're
Yeah,
elected, Carrie, remember when you and I used to just talk about financial crises and how to get rich from them
that was
back
a
then?
long time ago.
But I mean, your show is Financial Survival Network, and I used to run dollarcollapse.com, and that so
Right.
finance was our thing until politics and geopolitics almost made finance irrelevant because obviously gold and silver is going to go up in the chaos that's coming. And
Yeah.
obviously oil is going to go up when we have a Middle Eastern nuclear war. So the investment part of this gets really easy, which I guess we should be thankful for. There's no real thought process that has to go into buying all the gold you can get a hold of and then a bunch of energy assets on the side and then just sitting back and watching the
Yes.
chaos ensue and watching your net worth go up. But it
Frightening.
was more fun when we had to strategize a little bit.
You had to think. It wasn't
Yeah,
like
yeah.
this is like the Nifty 50 stocks. You buy them one decision stocks and you're set for life. Now it's a one decision, two decisions. How much gold, how much silver you can afford,
Yeah, see,
and then you sit back.
the difference is the Nifty 50 stocks were a mirage. They tanked and
Yeah.
cost everybody fortunes who put money into them. But gold and silver are like that. A one decision asset where it's going to go up for quite a while. We're going to have plenty of time to get out of our gold and silver in the next decade, just
Mm,
because there's so much front-loaded chaos right now that it's unfixable from the point of view of us going back to a placid society that could grow
yeah.
organically in a healthy way. It's going to take a really long time to get back there. And in the meantime, terrified people are going to be buying inflation hedges and safe haven assets. So
It is scary, but what choice do you have? And just because the country's going down the tubes, as we used to say, doesn't mean you have to go with it, or at least you got a means of self-preservation. But yeah, this is the situation doesn't show any signs of improving itself. We need this mass raising of consciousness around the globe that our governments are really not to be trusted and they need to be thrown out, and we need to kind of start over here. But hey, the idea of it actually happening, I don't hold out any great hope. Well, I think we'll leave it at that. We had a couple of good laughs, and we're following the Springfield, Ohio story closely to see what when they start shipping the products out of Springfield, we'll know it was true, right, John?
yeah, it's hard to know where that goes because that's it's hard to picture a town having its population go up by 1/3 from people
Overnight.
from very different cultures and how you make that work. It's not obvious how you make it work.
Hey,
So we'll
and
see. But I think the gang war in Chicago, um, I would bet on the local gangs because there's an awful lot of them, but you never know. Those Venezuelans are
hey,
are tough and brutal.
let's not forget they have a rich culture of gang warfare going back to Al Capone and the St. Valentine's Day massacre. And
Mhm.
these Chicago gangs, they're very tough and they don't take competitive threats lightly.
Yeah. Okay. There should be on one of those betting sites a Chicago body count over
Aligned.
under bet. Yeah, where you bet, is it going to be more than 10,000 dead people this year or less than 10,000? And you can bet on that. So I think that would be one of the most popular bets.
And no wonder, like all those people from Chicago are coming to Arizona and to Florida. Tons of Midwesterners here. They would have come anyway just to get away from the awful weather. Kind of flying bullets, just an added incentive to get out of that place.
You know, you mean the Venezuelan gangs and everybody?
Yeah,
Or okay, well, good luck to them in the Sun Belt. I think the populace is well enough armed that
yeah.
we know who's going to win that for sure.
Well, Colorado, we know they're in Colorado. They took over that place in Aurora that everybody denies. Well, it's definitely going to get interesting. And, one of our colleagues said, God, gold, and guns. And don't forget the ammo. Stock up on the ammo. and I don't know what else, probably some food and a water filter and a backup generator is probably not a bad idea either, John.
Indeed. Time to be preppers.
All right. Well, make sure you go over to John's Substack, rubino.substack.com. And there's a link in the show notes to this interview on our site, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. And while you're there, sign up for your free newsletter so you'll get notification of all our latest interviews and other stuff. We had a guy on the other day, John, who they figured out how to use IRAs for Bitcoin now, if you could believe it.
It was just a matter of time. That's something to look into and see how they work. We should
You
talk
could do
about those.
gold. Yeah. Why not? So, all right, John, we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks. Be well.
You too, Carrie. Take care.